Hello, everyone, and welcome back to King's Advisors. Today, we're going to talk about Napoleon. And with me to help me with that is Daimyo from the Gatekeepers Daimyo.
What's going on, man?
Not much. So, Napoleon, First Consul of the French Republic, Emperor of the French, General of the Army, Master of Europe. Wah, wah, wah. So, overall, we'll end with a ranking, but overall, thoughts. And let's go real quick, just for everybody to these are going to contain spoilers. Don't watch if you really want to see the movie. You don't want to be spoiled, but of course, it is historical fact, so we kind of know what happens. So, Daimyo, overall, kind of what did you think of this?
Yeah, so I felt like the film fell very very flat. You have a guy in history whose story has been told and written out, and somehow Ridley Scott was able to basically make this film about his love life versus the actual history and conquest that he's famous for, which is my first
So,
gripe
what's
with it.
funny, and I tell you, I almost disagree. So I, like you, thought that this movie felt really flat. It didn't know what it wanted to be. It kind of felt like it was trying to do a historical epic while also being a love story and also being a comedy. But I don't think it focused on love. It focused on him with Josephine playing a role, but it didn't feel like it felt like they were trying to show the love story without telling you about the love story. It felt weird.
So, okay, I think that is the issue that I'm having is that we can't even put a direct perspective on what this movie was or what it wanted to be. So the historical side was mostly played through the letters that he was writing to Josephine,
Yes,
and
which I actually really like that. I thought it was really cool how they used the letters to tell the passage of time and the love story without kind of like cucking him in a way. There were a lot of rumors like the week before this came out
Mhm.
that this was going to be a huge movie that just basically made him look like a bitch and made Josephine look like she was the master of Europe. And I didn't get that.
So my biggest issue with the letters, obviously the letters were an important part of history, and that's how we got to find out the more intimate details of his relationship with her and what he
Yeah.
was going through during these battles. What
Mhm.
I don't like in all of film and TV is when we are being told what's happening and not being shown. And I think
Okay.
that was the biggest problem I had was that
Mhm.
Ridley, for a lot of the battles, would you'd have this narrative or narration from Joaquin Phoenix, writing out what he's going through, and at the same time, kind of overlapping it with just kind of snippets and scenes of the battlegrounds. And I think this movie just would have been a lot more impactful if instead of showing us every battle that he's writing a letter to her, it would have just done a lot better, in my opinion, if he just showed us, each battle, each conflict that he was having, and you could show him writing the letters. I just felt like it felt almost cheap, like he's going to use the dialogue to progress the conquest and the timeline.
Mhm. Yeah, so, let's look here. This is a map of Europe in 1812. This is Napoleon's empire. And quite frankly, the title Master of Europe is fitting because this man was the most powerful person on the planet. And he had a military well over 1 million men strong. And in 1812, that was almost unheard of.
Hmm.
So it's interesting because if you don't know, and Daima, you and I are going to do a Napoleon stream on your channel later, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more. So if anyone's watching and you're really looking forward to like hearing about the histrionics of Napoleon and all that, the link to Daimyo's channel will be in the description. Go like and subscribe, and you'll get notified when that live stream happens. So you've got Napoleon, who is really kind of just marching east to grow the empire at the same time that England, by way of Arthur Wesley, is going through Portugal and Spain to stop him in France. And that's what ends up, we see the exploitation of Napoleon to Elba, and that's what brings that about. Wellington gets through Spain and basically forces the French court to exile him. Last week in the Witten, when we were talking about the trailer, and we watched the scene of the Battle of Austerlitz, I think was the name of the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had made the comment that, I would have enjoyed seeing the various symbols that commanders would have given to relay orders. And you said, I remember this, you said, man, it's really cut. So this isn't the whole thing. And if you remember the movie, it's pretty much the whole thing. They didn't really cut anything out, which annoys me because that's kind of what a lot of the movie felt like. It felt like they took 3 to 5 minute clips and placed them together.
So the picture itself looked very crisp and very clean, but we were talking previously, and I mentioned that the cinematography was flat. And what I mean by that is that it felt very like each scene that he set up was most of the time them standing still or him just talking in front of his army. And there weren't many points in the movie where you had a lot of motion going through with the characters themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, that's where I'm saying that's the difference between, I think, good cinematography and choreography versus, it being poorly done. And I felt like with this movie, there just wasn't much motion going on, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We got this shot of him at the battle that I was talking about. And what was really kind of disappointing was this and one other scene were probably the best parts of the entire movie. And I honestly think the best part of the movie was the coronation. I think it was beautifully shot. I think everything looked fantastic. And if I was the Oscar committee, I would nominate them for one thing, and it is the costuming.
I agree.
But what's so disappointing is this is Ridley Scott doing a historical epic that he's only, if they're fair, he's only going to get nominated. This movie's only going to get nominated for one thing, and it's costuming. And this should have been nominated for just about everything.
Well, the story and the character, Napoleon himself is, if you're going to be doing a story like this, it should be Oscar worthy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's incredibly famous. He's known to have one of the biggest conquests in history, at least in Europe, right? And characters like this and historical figures like this and Alexander just deserve more, in my opinion. Based off the trailers, I was giving this a really fair chance. I thought the trailers looked like decent. I really like Joaquin Phoenix's acting, and that's just another problem I had with it. Like, you have a historical figure like Napoleon, and an actor as great as Joaquin Phoenix, and somehow still the performance it fell flat, And I know, like, Joaquin Phoenix has so much range as an actor, and I felt like the only real part that he shined in was the coronation. And even though he wasn't doing much acting there, you could just tell he was embodying the presence of a guy who's full of himself, narcissistic. And I felt like, Ridley Scott, he had all the tools he needed to make a really good movie. He had a great lead. He has a historical conquest that is pretty much laid out for him.
Yeah.
And he had a $200 million budget roughly. And so there's no real excuse, I think, for just how boring, honestly, the movie was, and you know, it was very long as well. So
Yeah, and that's something we'll talk about in the bigger review we do on your channel.
sure.
But overall, let me ask you, what if you were going to give this a ranking, what would you give it?
I think a 5 out of 10 is fair. Um,
Okay, so
you
I
know,
I went a little nicer. I went about 6.5.
okay,
The coronation really, I was really happy with it. It's really the best thing in the entire movie. Um, I thought it was. There's some very important parts of that coronation that they put in the movie. I didn't think they would, and that's kind of why I give it a 6. Other than that, this is not something you need to see in theaters. And it's
I
really
agree,
upsetting because this should be something. This should be a movie that
100%.
you need to see in theaters. And it's just not. I'm very happy I went to a matinee. Halfway through the movie, I kind of thought, wow, I kind of wish I was watching Songbirds right now instead of
That's
Napoleon,
funny.
which is actually kind of depressing when you think about it.
Definitely.
But everyone, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go follow the Gatekeepers Daimyo. The link will be in the description. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at King'sAdvisors_.